Hi everyone, I'm Florian Girardot. I'm a senior visual effect artist specialized in compositing. Some of my recent projects include Deadpool 2, Detective Pikachu, and Spiderman Far From Home. Now, welcome in this first course, your first shot in Nuke. In this course, you will learn how to assemble and finalize a full CG shot using Nuke. This will allow you to discover Nuke, the interface, and its powerful tools. It's a great 101 introduction that will make you a compositor in just a few hours. Some of the key takeaways of this course are: understand the Nuke interface, discover the logic of nodal compositing, assemble render layers with the merge node, the basic of color correction in Nuke, understand channels, layers, and alpha, and import and export images with Nuke. All those steps will help you to build your first great shot in Nuke. And at the end of the course, you'll be familiar with Nuke. You'll understand the logic, and you'll be able to start using it on your own shots. Alright, I'm very excited to share those knowledges with you guys, so let's get started. Alright guys, before starting, let's see how you should follow this course. Well, you can decide to just watch and listen, but I will encourage you to follow by replicating the steps on your side. For each video, I saved a Nuke file. The first videos will not have any Nuke files because we will just explore the software's interface. But if at any time you'd like to follow along a specific part, you can open the Nuke file corresponding to this name up there. You will find this Nuke file in the material folder coming with this course, under the Nuke folder. Now, let's move on to the first video, where you will discover the interface of Nuke. See you there. Hi everyone and welcome in Nuke. So, if you've never seen Nuke before, this interface may seem a little bit confusing for now. But don't worry, you'll get used to it pretty fast. And it's actually pretty simple. For now, I'd just like to focus on the four main important panels. And first, here is the viewer. And this is where your images are going to be displayed. So images that you will import or the result of your comp. You have a few controls, a timeline, a few play buttons, and a few options up there. But we will see all that in a next video. Down here we have the node graph. And this is where we are going to create and organize the different nodes to achieve our compositing. The nodes we can use are all here in the toolbar and organized by category. I will just create one node here, just to show you that it appears in the node graph, and as well to introduce you to the last very important panel, which is the properties bin. And this is where are going to be displayed all the controls and attributes of your nodes. And for example, here, this is a transfer node. I will be able to adjust the scale or the rotation, but we'll see that a little bit later. But for now, this is it, guys. This is the four main important spaces of the interface of Nuke: the viewer, the node graph, the toolbar, and the properties bin. We do have as well menus up there, and there is other panels, the curve editor, the dope sheets, and there is hidden ones as well here. But don't worry about all that for now, we will go through a little bit later. So for now, let's go ahead and have a closer look to the node graph in the next video. See you there. In this clip, we are going to have a closer look to the node graph and how node-based compositing is working. Okay, Here is our node graph, and it's here that everything will happen. And before going any further, I need to make a quick stop and have a quick explanation about what is node-based compositing. Some of you may be familiar with layer-based compositing, like in After Effects, for example. In After Effects, you will have different layers on the top of each others, and you will apply effects and corrections to each layers. Here, it's a bit different. We have little boxes, like Legos, for example, that we call nodes, which are connected to each other. And this allowed us to create a procedural script. Each node has a function. For instance, here, I will have a color bar node, and the color bar node will display a color bar. And I will attach to the color bar node a blur node, and the function of the blur node is to blur the node above. And to that node, I can apply a color correction, and so on and so on. If you come from layer-based compositing or editing, you are used to timelines and layers. Well, here we have the same thing in Nuke. It's just represented a little bit differently. We have the timeline here, and our layers will be group of nodes. So I'm not here to tell you which is the best, because both systems have their pros and cons. But when it comes down to big full CG and VFX shots to comp, nodal compositing is pretty powerful and handy. And you will understand why through this series of tutorials. Okay, now let's see the different ways of creating nodes. Well, we do have actually 4 ways to create a node. The first one is to select a node in the toolbar here. And so they're organized by category. So for example, if you leave your mouse over an icon, you will have a little help appearing telling you what is the name of that category, which is also basically true for a bit of everything in Nuke. If you leave your mouse on something for a little bit longer, it will tell you a little bit what is this icon is about. Okay, back to the nodes. For example, over the color category here, I will find the color correction nodes. Let's take, for example, color correct. There you go. The second way to create a node is by doing a right click on your node graph, and then the same list of category will appear exactly the same way as up there. And so, for example, I will be able here to create, a defocus. There we go. The third way of creating a node is by typing the Tab key of your keyboard, and then you will be able to type the node that you're looking for. Let's say I'm looking for a transform node. So I will type transform, and here in the list, so we'll be able to select it and hit enter. There we go. And the last way of creating a node is by using shortcuts. For example, T for transform or B for blur. And those shortcuts can be found in the menus because, for example, the transform is under that menu, and you can see there's a little T on the side of the transform. It means that T is the shortcut for transform. And here, for example, the merge node will be M. Or if we go back to color correction, G for grade or C for color correct. So yeah, so many ways of creating nodes. You will quickly find your habits. I think that for now, the tab key and the shortcuts may not be your favorites as you're discovering the software, but as soon as you'll get used to it, you'll see that this is a very, very convenient way. Now, to connect nodes between each other, you will just have to grab the little input or the little output of a node and just drag and drop it onto another node. And in that way, you'll be able to connect nodes. To move in the node graph, you will simply have to hold down the Alt key, and with the left mouse button of your mouse, you just simply drag and drop to pan around. Or if you'd like to zoom or unzoom, you can do that with the scroll button of your mouse. Okay, this is it for the node graph, and in the next video we are going to see how to import images in Nuke. See you there. Now we will import our first images in Nuke. Let's create our first node together, and we are going to create a read node. The read node is in the image category up there, and here, read. When you create a read node, there is this window that pops up, and you will be able to go and find the files that you'd like to import. So I'm going to go in the course material folder that comes with this tutorial, and inside the material folder there is a source file, and here are the different layers that we are going to use for this course. And we will start right away by importing the earth. I will click here and select the earth, which is an image sequence. So maybe on your side it looks like that. There is many single files. It's actually one image sequence. So in order to be able to import the entire sequence at once, I will come here and tick that sequence option here. And now you should just have one line here. So you can select it and click on open. Perfect. Okay, now the second technique to import images and to create a node is with the right click button, and then in the same way I will go inside image, read, and I will come here and now import the earth clouds. So maybe on your side you don't have that preview window. Well, if you do not, it's because it's closed, and to open and close it there is this little black arrow up here. So see, nothing, and now when I click on it, it's here. Depending of the version of Nuke, sometimes it could be here as well. But well, it's pretty handy, allows you to preview real quick. Even you have here a little timeline, you can scroll to see how the animation looks like. All right, perfect. So we'll click on open here. Okay, the third technique to create a node is with the tab key. So I will hit the tab key and now type read. And I will come here, hit enter, and up there I will create the earth lights now. Boom, perfect. And of course with the shortcuts, because the read node is one of these nodes that has a shortcut. Here is the R key, so I will come in my node graph and hit the R key. And we will import the lens flare, for example. Okay, cool. Now there's another technique to import files in Nuke, and it's directly by drag and drop it from the Finder, from your file browser, directly into your node graph. For example, here, let's import the ship. So I will simply select the entire folder because it's an image sequence inside. So I will come back here and import the entire folder here, and Nuke will understand that this is an image sequence and will import it as a single read node. I'm just doing that because if I was trying to import, like for example, this, you will see that it will create a read node for each single file, which is not what we want here. But for example, you can as well take, for example, the sky and the lens flare and import those two folders at the same time, and that will create your two read nodes. All right, perfect. And now that we have a bunch of read nodes inside our comp, let's move on to the next video and see how to view them inside our viewer here. See you there. In this video, we are going to have a closer look at the viewer. Okay, right now we have a few read nodes in the node graph, but none of them is displayed in the viewer. And this is because none of them is connected to the viewer. I don't know if you noticed, but every time you create a new Nuke instance, there is always one node already here in the node graph. And it's the viewer. And this viewer needs to be connected to a node to display something. Okay, let's try. Voila. Now we can see the read nodes. Now there is a shortcut for that. I can select the node I'd like to see and press any of the numbered key of my keyboard. For example, the 1. Boom! My node is now connected to my viewer. Now, the viewer can have multiple inputs. For example, let's select this read node and hit the number 2 key. And voila! This is now connected as well. As you can see, we have those multiple inputs in the node. And it's great. I can toggle using the num keys of my keyboard. As you can see, I'm toggling between the different inputs here. And I can have more. I can use all my number keys. For example, I will connect a couple more. This is very useful if you need to compare versions, work on a specific part of a script, and so on. You will quickly find your own habits. For example, me, when I'm working on a shot, I always have the input 3 of my viewer plugged into my final output, and I use the input 1 and 2 to work on specific parts of my comp. You'll understand all that a little bit better when we'll have a more complex comp, in chapter 4 for example. Now let's have a look to the viewer controls. Down here we have the timeline. We can scroll through it. And we have here the different play controls. Play, stop, 1 frame at a time, next keyframe, and jump to the end, or jump to the beginning here. Yeah, all those commands are in both directions. You can use that as well to jump frames. For example, here from 10 to 10, but you can set up any number. I don't know if you noticed, but when we played a part, the frame on the timeline changed color. This means that the frames are now on the cache and can be played real time. Now up there, we can adjust the gain and the gamma, but be careful, this is important. The adjustment is just for the viewer. It doesn't affect your comp. And if you were to output your comp, those changes wouldn't be taken. Okay, let's reset those guys. And to do that easily, just hold down the Ctrl Alt on PC and Command Alt on Mac and click on the slider. This shortcut will always reset a slider parameter in Nuke. And this is true for any slider in the properties bin, for example. So this is a pretty handy thing to remember. Ctrl Alt click on PC and Command Alt click on Mac. Up there you have the layers. As you can see, we have different layers already. And this is because we are working here with multi-layers EXR files. But I will talk about that in the next chapter, so I won't say more for now. Here we have our different channels, RGBA and more, because of the multi-layer EXR. Here we have the LUT that Nuke is using to display the images. But don't worry about that for now. We will have a dedicated course talking about that. Here we have a few options. And for now, I'd just like to introduce you to this one, the proxy. This will toggle your read nodes to proxy. This is true if you specify the proxy file for your read node. And a proxy file is usually a lighter version of a file. In our case, it could be, for example, a lower resolution one for the read files. Well, if you don't have proxies specified in your read, then Nuke will simply down-res by half your current file. That will allow you to work much faster. For the rest of the icons, we'll see them a little bit later. Now, here, you can set this menu to wipe, and this will allow you to compare two inputs at the same time. With this little gizmo, you can move around and adjust the opacity. Here you can select the input by selecting any of the input connected to your viewer. You can just wipe it, as we are currently doing, or the stack mode, and you have a few fusion modes, but I leave you to discover that on your own. This is useful, for example, to compare versions or to make sure that two layers, for instance, are actually lining up. Alright, this is it for the viewer, just enough to get you comping. In the next clip, we will have a quick overview at the project settings. See you there. In this video, we are going to check the project settings to get ready for comping. Okay, always when starting a shot, you want to make sure that everything is right. And it starts with the project settings. We will go to the menu Edit up there and click here on Project Settings. The project settings are opening right here in the Properties bin. And we can see here different options, but for now, I just want to verify my frame range and size format. First, the frame range. Well, it seems to be already correct. All my read nodes start at 1001 and finished at 1090. So it's perfect for now. I will leave it like that. But if for any reason yours are different, please change it to 1001 to 1090. Why it is already set? Well, Nuke will take the first read node you import and set the project settings accordingly. But to be honest, sometimes it's a bit weird. I mean, Nuke's not weird, but if you don't pay attention, maybe you've been importing another file and the frame range end up being wrong. So better to double check. Now let's adjust the size format. Each shot have its own specifications. And it's important to set the right size, because you'll see later that many nodes in Nuke rely on that full size format. So here, for this project, I will set my size format to 1920 to 842. Okay, so my size format is set, the frame range is correct here, and I will leave the rest as it is. To be honest, it's pretty rare to have to adjust anything else here. Okay, well, I think we are ready to start comping. Okay, maybe I'll just delete that lens flare read node that I have 2 times here, so no needs. And I will save my comp. Of course, don't forget to save. And so for that, it's like in any softwares. File, save, and now I navigate to where you want to save your file. And I will save it in the material folder and create a new folder called Nuke. And now I will name my file C1v6 for chapter 1 video 6.nk. And boom, saved. Okay, now I think that we are ready to come for real. I will meet you in the next chapter. But before, I invite you to get a little bit more familiar with Nuke on your own. And try to import and read your own files. It can be video files, images, up to you. Try to understand properly how the read node is working and how to use the viewer to read all your files. But if you're ready, let's go. In this chapter, we are going to assemble our elements to create a first version of our comp that we also call a slab comp. Then in the next chapter, we will refine it to obtain the final comp. In this chapter, you will discover the merge node, how to do color corrections, and how to use the different layers of the EXR files. Now, in this video, we are going to discover the merge node. So we have all our elements loaded into read nodes. Now it's time to assemble them together. So first, let's organize them a little bit. I like to position them depending on their superposition. Different compers will have different habits, but usually we will place the layers which are the further away from us at the very top of our comp. And as we will go down, the elements get closest to us. You can do whatever you want, but I can tell you that this method is widely used. Now, to move nodes in the viewer, you just have to select one or several nodes and drag and drop them wherever you want. So here I will place my sky up there, and here I will place the planet layers, and here the ship, and finally I will have my lens flare. I'll take care of that a little bit later, but let's place it here for now. Okay, now let's merge the sky and the earth. For that, I need a merge node. And the merge node is living here in the merge category. It has as well the shortcut M that we will use after. The merge node has two inputs, A and B. The A input will connect to the element in front and B to the element behind. So to remember it, like B as behind or background, it's up to you. So let's connect the A to the earth and the B to the sky. And now, if we want to see the result of that, we will need to connect the viewer to the merge node. And voila, we have an incredible compositing. Okay, I will repeat the operation with the ship now. I will create another merge node by using the hotkey M this time and connect the ship in A and the result of the previous merge in B. And now we have the ship in the top of everything. Great. Okay, now in the next clip, let's discover how to use different fusion modes with the merge node. See you there. In this video, we will learn how to use the fusion modes of a merge node. On the top of the earth here, I'd like to add the lights. And for doing that, well, I will create another merge node. And I will select the node first, the ring node here, and hit the M hotkey. And as you can see, when I select my node, when I create a new node, it's automatically connected to it. With the merge node, it connects to the A inputs. But with other nodes, for example, if I create a color correction, it will simply connect to the only input there is. All right, I will delete that guy. Okay, and now I need to connect that new merge node between the earth and the merge one here. And this is very easy. For that, I just need to drag and drop that node on the link. As you can see, as I hover it, it just changed color. And so if I release my click, it will simply connect the B pipe here. So with the merge node, it always works with the B pipe. If you had the B pipe connected and try to drag and drop to connect the A pipe, it wouldn't work. Okay, now as you can see, that new layer here is totally occulting the earth layer. And so I will need to go and change the fusion mode of my merge free. And for that, this is the first time that we are going to go inside the properties panel to adjust things. So I just like to make sure that we are going to adjust the right node. So it's pretty easy. As you can see, you have the name of the nodes here. So here's merge 3, so it's here. But sometimes let's get good habits. And so when you are a bit tired of if you want to work fast, it's better to make sure that you are correcting the right node. So what I like to do usually is to go up there and click on that icon to close all the nodes open here. And I will simply come here and double click. And I will open only the properties of the merge I want to modify. This is just to make sure that I won't adjust something I don't want. Okay, now I will come over here in operation and click on it. And as you can see, there is many different fusion modes you can choose. And here I will use the plus. And voila. As you can see now, we do have the city lights on the top of the earth. Okay, I will repeat the same process with the clouds now. So I will make a little bit of space. I will put that guy a bit up as well. Voila. And I will select that guy. And what I can do as well, instead of creating a new merge node, I can select that guy and do Ctrl C and Ctrl V. And I will connect the A here and the B here. There we go. Also for now, it doesn't look perfect, but we will adjust that a little bit later. Now, I'd like to add another layer that we forgot to import in the previous chapter. So we'll create a new read node with the R key. And I will go into the material source folder and I want the Earth atmosphere. So click open, perfect. And I will create another merge node. So same, we can duplicate a node directly as well using the shortcut Alt-C. There we go. So I will connect that node here and up to the atmosphere. Okay. Another thing I'd like to show you here is if I double click here, I can come here and with the mix. So, okay, of course, as I said earlier, let's make sure we are on the right layer, but merge 5, perfect. And I can reduce the mix here just to have what I want. Now, you can add several times the same layer. So for example, here I'd like to add another version of the atmosphere that I will put behind just to reinforce that teeny atmosphere line here. So what I'm gonna do is to create another merge node with the M key that time. I will connect that guy here and here. Of course, we need now to change the fusion mode. So merge 6 here. I'll make sure. I won't close all of them all the time. It was just to show you first. Now, like every time you create a new node or you double click on it, it will always come up at the top of the properties bin. So that's a good way to remember as well how it works. Okay, now I will change the operation to under. So what it's gonna do is simply like, instead of having that layer over the rest of it here, it will place that layer under the rest of it. So now, same thing, if it's a bit too intense, I can reduce the mix intensity here. Perfect. All right. This is it for now. We won't add the lens flare because I will keep that for the next chapter. There is a few operations that we need to do on it. Now, let's move on to the next video to see what is a multi-layer EXR file. See you there. In this video, we will learn what is a multi-layer EXR file, what is a channel, a layer, and how to use them. So, before going any further and start adjusting my comp, we need to make a quick stop and talk about an important thing in Nuke, the channels and the layers. So let's start by talking about the channels. So there are several ones, and the three main ones you probably may know about. It's the red, the green, and the blue channels that compose the color of the image. We can access them by this little menu here, red, green, and blue, or by using the shortcut of the keyboard R for red, G for green, and B for blue. You say R. Isn't that shortcut as well to create a read node? Well, this is another thing to know in Nuke. Shortcuts are panel dependent. If I use the shortcut R while I'm on the viewer, I will toggle the red channel. However, if I'm using the same shortcut, the shortcut R, while I'm on the node graph with my mouse, I will create a read node. So it's important to pay attention to where is your mouse while using a shortcut in Nuke. Okay, back to the channels. Those three channels are grouped together in a layer, and this layer here is called RGB. Okay, let me represent that for you. No need to do anything on your own, just watch. Okay, we do have three channels. Red, green, and blue. Okay. And those three channels are grouped into a layer called RGB or whatever, but it's called a layer. And a layer can have 3 channels, but it can have as well a little bit more. And most of the time here, you will see that the layer have as well another channel called the alpha channel. For example, here, if you look at that read node, you can see that there is red, green, and blue, and that white square here represents the alpha channel. So what is the alpha channel? Well, I will connect my viewer to it, and I will come here to see alpha, and I will toggle on and off with the shortcut A. And the alpha channel represents the transparency of a layer. So white means opaque and black means transparent. So for example, if I were to merge the earth with the sky here, as you can see, the earth is solid here, and where it was black in our alpha channel, the stars are coming through. If I were to modify the alpha channel of the earth here, you will see that the earth will become more or less transparent. Okay, so here in my layer, I can add another channel called alpha. And so this layer will be basically our image file. So most of the image files have only one layer. For example, a JPEG file will only have one layer with the red, green, and blue channels. A PNG file will have only one layer as well, but will be able to carry as well the alpha channel. So red, green, and blue, and alpha. But here in Nuke, and in this particular case, which is the case in most of the production of visual effects and animation, we are using EXR files. And the powerful thing with EXR files is that they can carry multiple layers. When you look at your node, we have the red, green, blue, and alpha channels, but as well, we have that little green square here. And this means that there is more than one layer in that read node. Okay, let's have a look how to see what there is in that layer. So first thing first, I will connect my viewer to the read node. And if I come here, up here, this is the layer menu. So this is a bit confusing because it's called here channels, but this is actually the layers you will have in your EXR file. And as you can see, we do have the RGBA, but we have as well emission, fill light, key light, rim light. For example, I can preview only the fill lights. Okay, I will go back to the RGBA for now. And now I will come here in the merge menu and I will select the layer contact sheet here. And I will connect the layer contact sheet to my read nodes and connect my viewer to it. And click on show layer node. And it seems that there is a little issue here, reload. Okay, perfect. For some reason, it was displaying a little bit some errors. And as you can see here, we don't have only one layer, but we have a total of 5 layers. We have the RGBA, which is the layer we usually have everywhere, but we do have as well the emission, the fill light, the key light, and the rim light. Oh, okay, so if we go back to our demonstration here, basically, in the case of an EXR file, we will be able to have multiple layers within the same image file. And whatever we will do in Nuke, whatever the amount of layer we have, it doesn't matter. What we always will work on our main comp is the RGBA channel. So we may have like many layers, but in order to use them, we are going to have to extract them and to take them from the layer to the RGBA layer. And so for doing that, it's very simple. We are going to go to, pardon, I just want to move that node around for now and make a little bit of space here. We are going to go to the channel menu, which is right here. And we are going to grab the shuffle. The shuffle node will allow us to shuffle a layer to the RGBA layer. So what I'm gonna do here, I will come to the of my shuffle, the in one, and I will take the emission, for example. And by selecting that, it will select the emission layer and transfer it to the RGBA layer. You have to see how it works, like RGB from the emission layer going into the RGB of the RGBA layer. All right, if I plug my viewer to the shuffle, I will see only the emission layer of coming out of my ship. I will reproduce the operation. 1. And here now I will shuffle the fill light. If I plug my viewer, you can see we see only the fill light. And I will do it again for the other layers. And we do have here now the key light. Let's see if it works. Perfect. And another one, the rim light. Let's see. Perfect. Okay. So now that we have extracted all those channels, all those layers, let's see in the next clip how to work with those shuffled layers. See you there. In the previous video, we extracted the layer from the ship node. Now, let's see how to work with those different layers. So first, I'd like to organize myself a little bit in order to know what is what. And for that, I'd like to rename my nodes accordingly to the passes that I'm shuffling. So let's start with the shuffle number 1. I will double click on the property on the node to open the properties here, and I can see that this shuffle 1 is shuffling the emission layer. So I will come here and I will rename my node emission. Now I need to, as you can see here, it doesn't change anything, but if I click somewhere else, it changed the name. It's when you're leaving the box that it validates the name that you entered right here. So now I do have my shuffle that's shuffle the emission layer. Okay, I will do the same thing with the shuffle 2. So we'll double click on the shuffle 2 to open it. And here is the fill light. So I will type fill light, and I can as well hit the enter key. There we go. Now I will do the shuffle 3, and the shuffle 3 is the key light. There is a shortcut to rename a node, and it's the N key. So I will hit the N key, and now I will be able to type key light, okay, and hit enter. Great. And the last one is the rim light. So we'll do the same thing, rim light, and hit enter. Perfect. Now we have our 4 nodes renamed, and we'll be able to know a little bit better what is what. Another useful thing we can use here is postage stamp. And a postage stamp is like this thing here. It's a little preview of the node and what is the image at that node of your comp. So for that, I will select my node and go to Edit, Node, and Postage Stamp on Off. And here we have a little preview of our emission pass. I can do that as well using the shortcut Alt-P on the selected nodes. And here I have a little preview of my fill lights, key lights, rim lights. This postage stamp thing work on any node in Nuke. And for example, on that merge node, I can select it and do Alt-P, and I will have a postage stamp of the current status of my comp at that node. So this is very useful, but remember that this is power consuming, and this may considerably slow down Nuke. So I will be very careful by using it, especially in the comp tree. If it's for a renode, it's okay, but like for a merge like that, I wouldn't use it if I were you. Some comper will even prefer to disable the postage stamps of their read nodes just to speed up a little bit their script. Well, it's up to you. At least for me, I'd like to keep it for my read nodes because sometimes it becomes a little bit confusing. So there we go. Perfect. Okay, now, in order to use those passes, what I like to do first is to recreate my beauty. So let me clarify a little bit all of that. We will have an entire course focusing on working with render passes, or also called AOVs, but here is just an overview. A good habit is to first recreate the beauty, which is the RGBA of your original layer. And most of the time, the layer you will find in your RGBA will help you to recreate that beauty. Okay, this is a little bit confusing. Why are we breaking down all those layers if it's for recreating the original render? Well, you will understand that in a minute. So here, the lighter has been splitting the different lights into different passes in order to give us the possibility to adjust those light intensity and color separately. And most of the time, the render layers are merged with a plus operation. So we are going to do that right here. So I will come here and create a merge node by using the M key of my keyboard, and I will connect the fill light in A and the emission in B. It really doesn't matter what is the order, but let's do it that way, okay? And so I will double click on my merge node and I will come into the properties and I will change the operation for plus. Okay, let's see the result of that merge node. So right now we do have the emission here and the fill light. And now we plus them together. Okay, cool. Let's repeat. I will make a little bit of space here and make my viewer a little bit bigger. Okay, I will repeat that thing and I will do a Control-C, Control-V to create another merge node. And when I create that merge node, it automatically connects to the A input of my merge. But a good habit to have here is always to connect the B input to the previous merge and the A input to the other shuffle. So I'd like to invert those things. So I could do it manually by disconnecting that guy here and connect it here and like that. But what I could do as well, and I will do that with the next merge node, and I will do Control-C, Control-V, is when it connects to one input and you'd like the other one to be connected, we have a shortcut that allow you to swap the different inputs. And that shortcut is Shift X. Perfect. As you can see, Shift X allows me to toggle between A and B. Okay, I wanted the B to be connected to my merge and the A to be connected to my rim lights. Okay, perfect. Now, let's compare our original beauty with the beauty we recreated. So I will make sure that the merge 9 here is connected to my viewer in the input number 1. So with the key 1 of your keyboard. And I will select my ship up there and do the key number 2 of my keyboard to connect my viewer as well to the same viewer. And I will zoom on my ship a little bit. And I will toggle between 1 and 2, 1 and 2. And as you can see, it's exactly the same thing. It means that our CG breakdown, this is what we call a CG breakdown, works well. All right, for example, let's say we forgot the rim light. I will select that node and disable it with the hotkey D. Okay, now let's see. As you can see, we are missing something. There is something that's not there. So I know that there is a problem in my CG breakdown. All right, I will re-enable that node with the D key. All right, and now, as you can see, we do have exactly the same thing. Perfect. Oh, I don't know why this thing got turned on. Okay. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. As you can see, it's the same thing. Perfect. All right. Now you're gonna tell me, okay, why did we do all that CG breakdown if we just keep the same results? Well, it's just important to make sure that everything is correct with the passes. And now that we know that everything is correct with those passes, we are going to start tweaking them separately and adjusting them as we want. Okay, in the previous video, we've been splitting the different layers and reassemble them to recreate the beauty layer. Now, let's connect that CG breakdown to our main tree. So we'll make a little bit of space here. I don't need my layer contact sheet anymore. I will delete it. I don't need this thing neither. And I will just make a little bit of space here. Okay, perfect. And now I will connect the merge of my main tree. And instead of having it connected to the read node, I will connect it at the end of the ship tree here. I'm using the word tree. That's the word that we use usually for like a group of nodes. All right, so now this is connected here at the output of my merge 9. And I will connect my viewer here. And ta-da! Here's the result, and it doesn't look good. What's going on? Well, we've been focusing of recreating the beauty, and we've been focusing of recreating the same thing in the RGBA channel, in the color channel, but we didn't pay attention to the alpha channel. And if I connect my viewer here, and I come here to view my alpha channel, as you may remember from the previous clips, where I was explaining that the alpha channel drives the transparency of your image, we have here a very simple alpha channel. Here is the ship, solid, opaque, and everything else is transparent. Now, if I come at the end of my tree here and I connect my viewer as well, we can see that we are still viewing the alpha channel, but this doesn't look like the alpha channel we originally have in the beauty. And so it's a problem. It means that, for example, this thing is going to be opaque, but all those shades of gray here is going to be more or less transparent, and this is not what we want. So it's another good thing to know. It's important when doing a CG breakdown to check as well that our alpha channel is correct. And what I like to do when doing a simple CG breakdown like that is to simply re-inject the alpha of my read node at the end of my CG breakdown. Okay, very simple. Follow me. For that, I will need a copy node, and that copy node can be found in the channel menu here and copy. And I will connect the A input to my read node here and the B input to the pipe right after my last merge node. And what this node is simply doing? Well, it will take the alpha channel of the A input and inject it to the B input. We are replacing the alpha channel here with that copy node. We can do a bunch of other stuff, but I don't want to make it too complicated for now. All right, let's see. Voila. If I disable that node, we get that weird alpha channel coming out of those things here. But if I enable it, we do have exactly the same alpha channel as our read nodes. And now if we have a look at our merge to and toggle back to the RGB using the A key of your keyboard, we can see that the result is now correct. Great. All right. I just like to organize a little bit my nodes. So I will just drag and drop a little bit. So there's something that's very useful to organize node is that when you hold down the control key on PC or Linux or the command key on Mac, you will have those little yellow dots appearing on your lines, on your connections. Well, if I click on one of those yellow dots, I will create a physical dot that doesn't affect at all my link, but I can use them to organize a little bit my comp. So for example, I will do that here and I will create another dot holding down the control key and I will create that guy like that. And what I can do as well is using those dots as well to make it a little bit more square. You may think that I'm a maniac of the organization, but trust me, this is very, very, very important. And I can't stress you enough about that. This is a thing that will change your world. If you work in the studio, you need to keep your comp very clean for yourself, because when you have a lot of nodes, for now we have nothing, so it's fine, but when you have a lot of nodes, it's easy to get lost. But as well for your colleagues, because sometimes you will have to adjust the comp of one of your colleague, and or one other person will open your comp to be able to tweak things or see what did you do. So it's important to keep everything clean and organized. All right, this is not too bad for now. Let's move on to the next clip to do a little bit of color correction. See you there. All right, now that we have a clean CG breakdown, we are going to be able to color correct our CG. And the first thing I'd like to do here is to adjust the rim light of our ship. And this is very convenient because with this CG breakdown, I will be able to come here, insert some nodes only right here to affect only the key light. So for that, I will come here in the color menu and I will select the color correct node. And I will insert that node right after my key light. As you can see, it's named color correct, so it's probably a node for color correction. Right. All right. Here, I will come here and increase the gain. And as you can see, as I tweak it, I'm just affecting my key light. And this is why a CG breakdown is very powerful. It allows us a lot of flexibility to adjust only the part, the light, the little thing that we want. So this is very, very handy. So there we go. I just adjusted the key light of the ship. If I'd like to adjust, for example, the emission as well, I could do it. So I will select the shuffle node and come here and create a color correct. There we go. And for example, I can come into the gain here and click on the little wheel to adjust not only the gain, but the color of the gain. And like here, for example, I could change the color of the thruster by adjusting the gain of my emission. See? It's pretty cool, no? Okay, I like them blue, so I will just delete that color correct node for now. So you don't need to have a CG breakdown in order to color correct your comp. A color correct node can be inserted anywhere in the comp. And let's see that by adjusting a little bit the earth. So right now, I'd just like to change a little bit the visibility of my clouds. I will create for that another color correction. And another way to create a color correction is by selecting a node and hitting the C key of your keyboard, which is the shortcut for the color correct node. And that node will come directly after the selected node. Okay. I could use the contrast and reduce a little bit the contrast, but I don't really like the effect of it. Personally, I don't like too much that contrast slider. What I prefer to do when trying to adjust the contrast is to work on the gamma and the gain. So here I will increase a little bit the gamma, which will increase a little bit the medium value of your image. And because some places now are too bright, I will now reduce the gain. Great. Okay. Now, let's go a little bit further with the color correct node. And there is something very useful that you can do with that color correct node is to adjust only a certain range of values of your image. And as you can see, we do have the shadows, midtones, and highlight controls here that will allow us to adjust only the shadows, the midtones, or the highlights. And let's do that because I think that here my clouds are way too bright and it's kind of weird. So what I'm gonna do is first let's connect the viewer to the output of the color correct 2 here. There we go. And now what I can do is to come to the ranges here. And if I click on tests, I will have my colors mapped into 3 different regions. The dark values will be in black and dark green. The midtones will be in this medium gray, and the highlights will be in those bright white things here. And if I want, with those curves, I can adjust what is the highlight or what is the shadows part, for example. Okay. When I'm satisfied with that, I can uncheck the test here. And now if I come here, I will be able to adjust only the highlights, the medium, or the dark. And here what I want to do is just to reduce those very bright spots here. So I will come to the highlights and reduce the gain a little bit. Okay, let's see at the end of my comp how it looks like. Yeah, I think it's a bit better. All right, so there is different things you can do and you can keep adjusting as you want. One thing I like to do here is to change the color of my lights of the city. So I will create another color correction after the earth lights with the C key. And I will come to the gain here, open the color wheel and turn the city light a little bit more orange. Okay, if you think that it's not convenient for you to adjust with those tiny sliders, or if the RGB values are not very handy for you, what you can do, you can maintain the command button and click on the wheel, and it will open another color panel here that gonna allows you more control if you prefer to adjust using RGB or the HSV or the TMI. You can have all those controls, and that could be very useful as well as the color wheel. So this is as you prefer. Most of the time, this little slider here is enough for me, but sometimes having more control is very handy. All right. Before finishing this video, I'd like to adjust a little bit the mix of the merge of my atmosphere, just to reduce it a bit. But we are going to keep adjusting colors and things in the next chapters. Alright, for now, let's meet in the next video for the homework assignment. See you there. Alright, before moving on to the next chapter, I will suggest you to try to play around a little bit with what we've been learning in this chapter, and mainly by trying to do your own version of your shots, by, for example, changing the color corrections, by creating new color corrects, or by adjusting the mix of the different merge nodes. You can as well try to play a little bit more with the different AOVs, or you can as well try to create overall color corrections by plugging, for example, a color correct node at the end of your comp and creating some overall filters that can be cool. Well, I think there's plenty of things you can explore, and you'll see it's very creative, all those things you can do by only using merge nodes and color corrects. Alright, when you're done with that, I'll meet you in the next chapter. See you there. In this chapter, you will discover the 2D transform controls and how to create basic interpolation animations. You'll have an overview of the curve editor and the dope sheet. You will learn as well a bit more about formats and B-box. In this first video, I will add the lens flare to my comp. So previously, we've been adding all the layers but the lens flare here. And the reason I didn't add the lens flare yet is because the lens flare has a different format than the rest of our comp. If you see here, our comp is 1920 by 842, and that read node here is a HD file of 1920 by 1080. Now, in order to merge it properly and to make sure that this lens flare will be in the right position, what I will need to do is to reformat that image. Okay, for that, I will need a reformat node, and the reformat node can be found in the transform menu here and here, reformat. Okay, I will plug that guy to my read nodes, and now if I preview after the reformat, if I put my viewer right here, as you can see, the format of the image changed to the 1920 by 842. So why Nuke knew that we needed that file format? Well, because we ask here the reformat to go to the root format. And I don't know if you remember, but at the beginning of the course, we went to the project settings before starting. And we went here to the full size format and we set it up the full size format for our comp to make sure that this is the format that's going to be used. Well, the reformat node is one of these nodes that will come and grab that information to reformat automatically to the right dimension. Now, here, if you would like to adjust the format of that read node to any other things, you will be able here to choose to many different formats or even to create your new one if you'd like. Here you can choose to reformat to a format that you will choose here, but you could as well scale it or use a box where you will be able to type directly the dimension you'd like. All right, I will revert back to format for now, and now I will merge that guy to my comp. So I will come to the merge menu and create a merge node, and that merge node, I will connect it to my main pipe here, and there we go. And let's change the fusion mode as well, and for that guy, I will use a plus. Voila. Perfect. Maybe actually I will use a screen. So if you have doubts between two fusion mode and you like to experiment to see the difference, after modifying the operation in the merge, you can use the up and down arrow to pass through the different fusion modes. So for example, here, I think that the plus is bringing too much of the brightness here, so the screen mode will be more what I'm looking for in that case. All right, so this is it for now, and now let's meet in the next clip to talk about the bounding box. See you there. In this video, we are going to talk about the bounding box. What is the bounding box? Well, we call it as well B-box. Well, the B-box defines the limits of our image. So here we have a file format of 1920 by 842. But some of our layers are actually bigger than that. And even if we don't see it, there is some information outside. And how do I know it? Well, I do have this dotted line all around here. And it means that here there is a bounding box a little bigger. And this is the actual size of our bounding box up there. And so why do I care? Well, it means that even if I see only that part of my image, Nuke will still calculate those pixels out there. And it means that my Nuke is going to be slower and everything going to be slower. And sometimes, and we will see that through that entire curriculum, having a B-box is very important for some effects. But in our case, we don't need them, and we don't need those extra information. All right, first, let's see what is this actual B-box. So I will do a right click on my viewer, and I will select here Show Overscan. And here you can see, wow, there is actually a few things coming out of that. All right, for now, I will just like to crop all those things because I don't want those pixels to be here. I don't want those pixels to be calculated. I don't need to preview that for now, so we'll simply do a right click again and disable the overscan here. And I will create a crop node in order to disable those B-box here. The crop node can be found into the transform menu and here, crop. All right, and I will connect that crop right here. And boom, as you can see, that dotted B-box disappeared. And now we do have a file format of 1920 by 842 still, and the B-box is, oh, why? Why it's 921 by 843? Well, This is just a little thing in Nuke, don't be worried about that, but the answer is because the crop format used that option, the black outside, and if you leave your mouse on the black outside, you will have the explanation. It just add 1 pixel of bounding box to make sure that all further pixels outside will be black. In this case, we don't need that, and we'd like our B-box to be the exact same size that our size format, so we'll just untick that guy here. B-boxes can come from many different places. For example, if I didn't use the reformat here, as you can see, I will have merged the layer and it will have, of course, take the size format through that merge here, the size format here, but it will have keep the information of all the extra pixels that I have here. So the reformat node as well is always as well cropping your B-box. If you wanted to keep the B-box, you could come here and click on preserve B-box. All right? Also, one thing, and I don't want to make it too complicated. This is the first course of many, but it's better to get good habits right away. I did put my crop nodes right here, but the best way to fix cropping and B-box issues is by investigating where the B-box is coming from. So what I do usually is I hook up my viewer here, for example, and I try to figure out where is my big B-box coming from. So is it coming from the ship? And I will hook my viewer. No, the B-box is perfect here. So is it coming from here? Yeah, perhaps. So maybe it comes from the sky. No, the B-box is right. So maybe it comes from the Earth. Oh yeah, it comes from the Earth. So the atmosphere, maybe here. No, here was fine. So it means that my B-box issues come from this layer. So let's see. Yes, eventually this layer who does have a bigger B-box. So in order to fix my B-box issue, sometimes it's better to put directly the crop where the problem is coming from. So I will put a crop here. I will remove the black outside. And normally, here it's fine-ish. I still have a little bit of B-box issue here, so let's see where it comes from. Oh, it seems that actually those layers have a teeny bit more B-box as well. So just to be sure, I will duplicate that crop here as well, and here as well, and here as well. There we go. Now we are sure that Nuke won't do useless operation and calculate useless pixels. So now that I've done that, I don't need that crop anymore. So before deleting it, let's just disable it to make sure that it works. And yes, as you can see, it works. So now I can delete it. And there we go. We do have a clean comp. All right. In this very short video, I would like to introduce you to the transform node. The transform node can be found here in the transform menu and here transform. It as well has the T shortcut. So I will connect a transform node and I will plug it right after my read node here. When I create a transform node, you can see that little gizmo appearing on your viewer. Okay, so some of you may not see it, and there is possibly two reasons for that. The first thing, your overlay option for the viewer is turned off. And you can see it here by doing a right click and check overlay off. Right now it's on, but if it's off, you won't see the gizmo and you will have that red thing here mentioning that the overlay is off. The shortcut to toggle overlay on and off is the Q key. And that's very useful because when you want to preview your image with all those graphic elements on the top, like the bounding box, the resolution, and gizmos, you can easily toggle on and off with the Q key while your mouse is on the viewer. The second thing that may affect the visibility of that gizmo is if the transform properties are closed. In order to have the gizmo and modify the transform node, you need that node to be open here. in the properties bin. Okay, now if I have my mouse on the top of that gizmo, I can move that layer. And here, if I have it on the cycle, I can scale it. And if I have it on the little bar here, I can rotate it. As well as you have skew control on the small bar here and here. All right. For now, we'll revert back the rotation by holding down Ctrl-Alt, remember? And the scale as well. And I will just leave the translate a little bit down to have a little bit more of the flare inside my screen. Maybe it's a bit too much. So I will type here half of it, -35. All right. I think this is good for now. All right, cool. I will close my transform here. And let's move on to the next clip to see how to animate a transform node. See you there. Alright, between the previous video and this video, I've been caching my animation just to see how my shot is looking like with the animation. And I think it's important to do it once in a while to know what's going on with the animation. Okay, and I think that right now it looks pretty good, but there is still a few things I'd like to do. And in this video, I'd like to increase the camera movement. And we are going to be able to do that with a transform node and animation. All right, I will pause the video for now here. And I will create a transform node right after my merge 10 here. And for that, I will use the shortcut T. Perfect. And I will insert that node right here. Okay, cool. And now let's move a little bit that. So remember, if you don't see that little gizmo, it's because your overlay is off. And to toggle on and off is the Q key, or you can as well do a right click and select overlay here. Okay, cool. Now, I will need to increase a little bit the size of my image, because if I start moving that guy around, I will creating black bars, and it's not what I'd like to do. So I will come here in the scale and I will increase it by 10%. So I will type 1.1. 10% I think is a good threshold, a good habit to have. Don't increase too much the scale of your images, because you will lose a lot in quality. Sometimes it's okay, sometimes it's not, but I think that 10% it's a little bit, personally, it's a little bit my limit. All right, now that we've been increasing the size of the image, as you can see, we have a bounding box. And those are all the extra pixels we are going to be able to use to create our fake camera animation on the top of our shot. So now I will come to the first frame. My first frame is the frame 1001 in my case, all right? And I will move that gizmo a little bit to place it more or less like that. You know, you can do whatever you want, but this is what I like to do, to pan from left to right as the shot goes on. Okay, perfect. Now that I've positioned this thing, I need to create an animation key. And for that, I will simply come in the properties bin here, and I will click on that little menu here. If you leave your mouse on top of it, you can see animation menu. So it's probably here that we're gonna find what we want. I will click on that guy and I will click on set key. And there we go. We've been creating our first animation key, a keyframe. And this is important to notice that here now those controls turned blue. This means this parameter is animated, and when it's blue like that, it means that we are on the keyframe. You can see as well that here on your timeline, you have that frame which is blue now. And this means, hey, we have a keyframe at the frame 1001. In order to see the keyframes, you need the node which is animated to be open. So if I close the transform properties here, I don't see that blue keyframe anymore. Also, another pretty handy feature in Nuke, now that I've been created animated values inside the nodes, I will have that little red tag with an A on the top of my node that specifies that this node is animated. And it's handy because it's easy to forget which node has animated keys. Okay, now we'll open the transform again. As you can see, we can see our blue keyframe here again. Now, we created only one keyframe, so nothing will happen. But we are going to go at the end of our shot, and we are going to create another animation key. So I will come to frame 1089, and here, as you can see, it's not the same color anymore. It's a dark gray versus like a pretty saturated gray here. Well, it means that this parameter is animated, but I'm currently not on a keyframe. Okay, so I will come here and I will move my gizmo. And now this turns blue, like saturated blue. And it means that we created a keyframe here. So it's an important thing to know in Nuke. When you've been animated an attribute, now this attribute is on auto keyframe mode. It means that if you go anywhere on your timeline and you modify that attribute, in our case the translate here, it will automatically create a keyframe. Alright, so you need to be careful. If you create a keyframe and you didn't want it, well, you can come here. Of course, you need to be on the keyframe here, and you can come to the animation menu and click on delete key, and it will delete that keyframe. Okay, so I've been placing a keyframe at the beginning of my shot and a keyframe at the end of my shot. So now if I play it, I will see that I have an interpolation between those two keyframes. And this is perfectly what I wanted to have. So with the Q key, I could hide the overlay to see a little bit better what's going on. And you may have to type the Q key twice because now we can hide two things in the viewer. We can hide, of course, the gizmo and the bounding box, but as well this little thing here, which is the representation of our interpolated vector. Okay, I think I'm happy for now with the animation. I will smooth it a little bit in the next video. But before ending this video, I'd like to show you another thing. So for now, I've been animated only the translate attribute of my transform nodes. If I want to animate another parameter, for example, the scale, I can do it as well. But I will have to create other keyframes for that, which will be independent than the translate attribute. So for example, I can create a keyframe here and come here and create another keyframe, and there we go. Okay, obviously this is not what I want, but you can do whatever you want. Alright, now I'd like to delete that animation I've been creating in the scale. So for that, I will come to the animation menu and come here and click on no animation. Nuke will ask me if I'm sure, so yes. And voila, no more animation of my scale parameter. However, be careful with one thing. Nuke will keep the value of that frame here and set it as the new value of the scale. So you may have to re-enter the correct value for your scale here, which was 1.1. Perfect. Okay, now let's move on to the next clip where we are going to talk about the curve editor. See you there. Alright, in the previous video, we've been creating a fake camera movement on the top of our shot. Now, in this clip, I'd like to smooth a little bit that movement. And for that, I will go inside the curve editor. If you don't have that panel here, well, you will have to click here and go into Windows, and here you will find the curve editor. So for now, I don't have anything in the curve editor, and this is because I don't have any node open in the properties bin. So I will come into my node graph and double click on my transform node to open its properties. And now if I come back in the curve editor, I can see that I have the curve related to my transform node. Okay, maybe you don't see exactly the same thing as I do, so if you need to move inside your curve editor, you can maintain the Alt key, and with the left mouse button you can pan around, or with the wheel of your mouse you can zoom and unzoom. And if you'd like to frame your animation within the space you have, you can use the F key. Alright, great. So now, what do we have here? Well, for those of you who are used to animation, this may look a little bit familiar to you. Otherwise, for those who never seen that before, well, it's very simple. Here we have the time, and here we have the values. And here we have the curve related to the X transformation, and here we have the curve for the Y transformation. Those little dots here are the keyframes that we created. And in between, that curve is the interpolation. So with the curve editor, it will be easy to actually modify the interpolation between two keyframes. And this is what I'm going to do right now. This is a Bezier curve, and a Bezier curve can be adjusted with handles. And here we have the little handles. And if I click on it and grab it, I will be able to kind of smooth my curve. Now my camera movement will start like more slowly and will speed up as we go through the shots. I will do the same thing at the exit point, so on my last keyframe, and I will smooth my curve the other way. Now we have a shot, a camera movement will start slow, speed up, and slow down at the end. Cool. I will do exactly the same thing with the curve of Y. So I will smooth up a little bit here and a little bit here as well. You can really do whatever you want. This is for the example. But okay, this is perfect. So we'll preview what's going on with that. And there we go. I think it looks pretty good. Cool. There is other stuff that you can do with the curve editor, but for now, I'd just like to show you how you can actually adjust a keyframe. And this is very handy. So for example, you can adjust your keyframe directly in the curve editor. And for that, I just have to select a keyframe. And here, if I drag it up, down, I will adjust the value of that keyframe. Or I can as well drag it on that direction and I will adjust where the keyframe here. As you can see, the keyframe here on my timeline is moving to indicate where is my keyframe now. So I made a mistake in the previous clip by saying that I will go to the last frame of my clip, 1089. The last frame of our clip is actually 1090. So we'll just drag my frame there. As well, to adjust the keyframe, you can do it by drag and drop it. But as well, if I select my frame, I can double click here and edit by typing the value I'd like. So for example, here I will type 1090 and hit enter, and it will move my keyframe where I want it to be. Perfect. Okay, let's now move on to the next video where we are going to talk about the dope sheet. See you there. In this video, we are going to see how to use the dope sheet to adjust animation keys. Alright, I'd like to create another animation here. And you don't have to animate a transform node. Any node can be animated. For example, the merge. As long as you have this little animation menu here, it means that the parameter can be animated. Right now, I'd like to animate that color correction that we've done earlier in order to boost the key light. I feel that at the end of the shot is great, but when we are at the beginning of the shot, it's too much. So let's create a keyframe at the end of the shot where we think it's okay. Alright, here for example, I will come to the gain and I can click on that guy, or I can do a right click on the gain as well and click on set key. Okay, perfect. Now I will come to the beginning of my shot, I mean where the ship is entering the frame, for example here. And I will reduce the gain. And as I explained you earlier, this is creating automatically a keyframe, so perfect. Okay, I think I can almost reduce it all over to 1. Okay, cool. And now we will have our gain interpolation in between. Perfect. But what if I think that this frame could have been a little bit later? Well, I could click and delete that frame and go a little bit further and recreate it. Oh well, it's a bit of work, right? Like right now there's only 2 keyframes, so it's fine, but if you had more, it would be a little bit of a headache. Well, for that, we have the dope sheet. I will click here to go into the dope sheet, and if you don't have it, it's the same as the curve editor. You will be able to find it by clicking here, go into Windows, and here you will have the dope sheet. So, same as the curve editor, the dope sheet won't display anything if your properties are closed. For example, I will need to go back to my node graph, open the properties of my color correct in order to see those keyframes in my dope sheet. So here I do have the keyframe of my gain, the first one and the last one. So how it works, here you will have the name of your node and then the attribute animated. Okay, and the cool thing here that I can easily select a frame and drag and drop it where I want the frame to be. And I will be able, for example, to do the same thing here. And now I can easily move around my different frames. If you had several animated node opens, for example, a transform 2 as well, you will be able to see your different nodes all at once in the same dope sheet, which is very handy when you have several things to be adjusted in function of each other. Alright, this is the end of this chapter about animation, transform nodes, and format. But before going to the next chapter, I will invite you to try to create your own camera movement using another transform node, for example, doing a push-in inside the shot. And as well to animate different parameters. For example, you could animate the emission of the ship to have the thrusters go on and off, as well as the brightness of the lens flare. And when you're done, I'll meet you in the next chapter. See you there. Welcome in the last chapter of this course. In this last part, we are going to make a few tweaks to our image, such as adding a glow, defocus, vignette. We'll finally end this course by rendering the final results. Now, let's start right away with the glow. So, I'd like to first add some glow to the thrusters of my ship here. And for that, I will simply come here after the emission, because this is where the thruster light is. And I will add a glow node. So the glow node can be found in the blur menu here and here, glow. Alright, as you can see, we now have a bit of glow around the thrusters. Let's try without and disable that node with the D key and re-enable it. And as you can see, you can toggle on and off to see the difference. Alright, for example, I could adjust this a little bit by increasing the brightness of my glow, and I could adjust as well the size of how this glow is spreading. I'll let you do a little bit what you want here. I just wanted to show you that we do have a glow node that can be used in a pretty simple way. You have other control, for example here the saturation. If you will have like a lot of information with the tolerance, you could define what is going to glow and what is going not to glow by defining the threshold. And if you want to add a tint to your glow, you could do that here. Alright, so the same fashion, we could do as well a bit of glow out of those city light here. So we'll select the color correct free, hit the tab key and look for the glow that way. I will select the glow and hit enter, and the glow will be created right here. So right now this is way too big, so I'd like to reduce it a lot, at least for the size and the brightness as well. You're like, well, it's almost nothing now, right? But still, you can toggle on and off to see the difference. It can help a little bit. You can do really what you want. In this case, you are the art director. Now, I'd like to show you that in Nuke, one thing can be done in multiple ways. And for that, I would like to create a homemade glow. And you'll see, it's very simple. Basically, I'd like to glow the entire hearth here, and just to give it more presence, and as well to create a bit more atmosphere on the top of it. So for doing that, what I will do first is to blur my image. So to create a blur node, I will go to the blur menu here and create a blur. You could have done that as well with the B key, all right? So we'll connect my blur right here, and I will connect my viewer to the blur. And now on my blur, I will just, I don't know, put a value of 30, 32, whatever, okay? And now I will merge that version of my shot blur on the top of my image. So I will create a merge node with the M key. All right, connect the B pipe of my merge here and connect my blur version of my hearth in the A pipe. Now let's connect the viewer to the merge. And of course, we are seeing only the blurred version because the merge mode is over here. So we'll come here and set the mode to plus. And here we go. We do have a homemade glow. All right, this is way too much, so I will reduce the mix of my merge. And I will just leave it a little bit, not too much. It's better to compare to see how it looks like with at least the sky and maybe everything. So we'll connect the viewer at the end of my comp. There we go. And to toggle on and off my blur homemade glow, I will just disable and enable the merge here. And yeah, I think it adds quite a lot. Now, if I want to tweak a little bit that homemade glow, for example, I could add like a blue tint to it to represent a little bit better the atmosphere of the hearth. So for that, I will add a color correction node between the blur and the merge. So we'll go to the color correct menu, and I could use the color correct that we used before, but I'd like to show you another node that we used a lot, which is the grade node. So I'll create the grade node. And the grade node is another color correction node that has approximately the same controls and allows you as well to tweak other things. I won't go into details, but this is a node that we are going to use a lot through this entire series, of course. Now, I will just tweak a little bit the gain here and put it a little bit more toward the blue. There we go. And we can toggle with the D key to enable or disable the grade to see how this grade node is affecting the things. And yeah, I think I like it that way. All right, so we now have two kind of glow. The glow that comes in a node like that, and a homemade glow that we just did together. Now let's move on to the next video where we are going to apply a defocus to our image. See you there. In this video, we are going to smooth out a little bit the edge of the earth, as well as applying global defocus to our background. So if you look at the earth right now, you can see that the edge here is very aliased and sharp. And this is not nice for the integration. So I'd like to smooth that out a little bit. And for that, I will use an edge blur. And the edge blur node can be found here into the filter blur menu. And here we do have edge blur. Okay. Now the question is, where am I going to place the edge blur? Well, I could place it at the end of the earth tree, which is all that part, because this is all represents the earth. Yeah, well, let's try that. I will put my edge blur here and now increase the size of it to see what's going on. And well, it doesn't seem to work well. I don't know what's going on. Actually, I know what's going on, but it doesn't work well here. Let's see why. Okay, I will unplug the edge blur for now. And now, why it doesn't work? Well, Because the edge blur is taking in consideration the alpha of my image, and it will detect the edges in the alpha and blur them. For example, if I plug the edge blur right after the earth here, and I look at it, I can see that the edge blur is working properly. All right, so if we place it there, it doesn't work because we have here a smooth alpha coming out of the atmosphere, as well as a smoother alpha coming out of the homemade glow that we've done. So definitely, if we want to smooth out that hard edge that we have here and here and here, we will place that edge blur after those guys, but before those smooth guys here. All right, so we'll disconnect the edge blur and place it here. And now let's see what's going on. Well, it seems that we still have a problem. Well, I told you that the edge blur is using the alpha of the image. And here our alpha was good, it was working fine. And the problem here is coming from that merge, where we are merging the RGB of the earth light, but we are as well plusing the alpha channel. And if I connect my viewer here and I hover my mouse of the alpha here, I can see in the information down there that the alpha is 2. And this is not good. An alpha channel always needs to be between 0 and 1. When the alpha is above 1, you will start having problems when merging layers. So we need to correct that. And the simple thing to correct it is to come to your merge node and to say, okay, you are going to take in consideration the RGBA of everything, but I want you only to mix the RGB. So in the output of my merge node, I will say RGB. And this is a bit confusing because even if you say RGB, it will mean that it will merge everything, but it will just take the alpha channel of the B input of your merge. Okay, now if I hover my mouse on the viewer, you can see that my alpha is 1. I could have the same problem with that merge here, but as you can see here, my Earth Clouds layer doesn't have an alpha channel, so it won't add anything on the top of the previous alpha channel, so I don't need to modify anything on my merge 4. But if I wanted to be sure as well, I could come here and set my outputs to RGB. Now let's go back to my edge blur, and I will shift back to the RGB color with the A key. And as you can see, it works. Perfect. Let's put a value of 6. I don't know. I think it could be good. And in order to judge the effect, let's plug our viewer at the end of our comp. And let's toggle that edge blur on and off to see the difference. And yeah, I think it's pretty cool. All right, now let's add a defocus to our background. Well, now it's a little bit easier because we're gonna apply the defocus overall. Now, we could have alpha issues as well. So let's see how the alpha is looking like after the merge one. So we'll plug my viewer after the merge one, and I will toggle to the alpha channel with the A key while my mouse is on the top of the viewer. And I can see that I have a kind of weird alpha as well, right? So this is like above 1, and this is a little bit weird. So I don't know what's going on, but what I want to make sure is that my alpha is correct before applying another effect on it. So what I can do here is to use a shuffle node that will help me. So the same shuffle node that we use here, but you will see. Okay. So I will create a shuffle node with the tab key and by looking for the shuffle, and I will place it after my merge here. And now I will check my shuffle, and I don't want to touch anything. Basically, I want the shuffle node to output whatever it inputs, so from RGBA to RGBA, but I just like to set that here. All my alpha is going to be 1, is going to be white. And now if I go after my shuffle, I can see that everything is white and everything is at 1, and we don't have like those black and white values, and neither those values above 1. So it's perfect. Okay, I will toggle back to the RGB with the A key, and I will now create my defocus. So same, the defocus live in the filter blur menu here, and right here, defocus. Okay? And I will plug the defocus after my shuffle and my viewer to it, and let's see. So I'll zoom in, and I can see that here it's defocus. If I toggle on and off, I can see the difference. One more time, in order to judge properly, I need to connect my viewer at the end of my comp. There we go. And now I can go back here and toggle on and off to see the difference. And I think it's pretty good. You can increase it as much as you want, but I think that we just need a teeny bit, maybe like 1.5 in our case is enough. So I think that there's two things that are important to remember in this clip, that you have different kind of blur that you can use, like the defocus, the edge blur, and we use as well the blur previously. But as well, it's important to realize that most of the blur nodes are driven by the alpha channel. So it's important when creating a blur node to be careful of how is my alpha channel, is everything is correct. All right, cool, perfect. Now let's move on to the next clip where we are going to create a rotor shape to create a vignette to darken one side of the earth. See you there. In this clip, we are going to draw a shape on our image in order to darken only a part of the earth. In our case, the left part. And for doing that, I will use a rotor node. The rotor node can be found in the draw menu up there, and here, rotor. You can as well use the O shortcut. Okay, when I create the rotor node, you can see that there is new menus popping up on my viewer. If I close the properties and reopen it, you can see the difference. And those things are the tools that will help us to draw shapes. For example, here I have the Bezier curve selected, and I will be able, for example, to draw a mask around my ship in order to, I don't know, color correct it separately. Okay, this is just a garbage mask for the example. And we don't need that, of course, because we have the ship on a separate layer, but this is just for the example. So how this will work? Well, let's go after the ship here, and I will create a color correct node. I don't know if you noticed, but all the node in Nuke got that little input on the right. And if you drag it, like you can see that it says mask. Almost all the nodes in Nuke have a mask input. And what is it for? Well, when you plug a mask to the mask input of a node, you are defining the area of the image that will be affected by the node. For example, if I plug that color correct here and I plug it to my mask, and I cut here and I modify that, I need to plug my viewer here, of course. But like as you can see, I'm affecting only which is in the mask. So how does it work? Well, if I look at my rotor node, there is nothing here. But if I check the alpha channel using the A key, I can see that whatever is inside the mask is white. So basically the mask input of a node doesn't have to be a roto, it could be just an alpha channel. And that node will use that alpha channel, black and white, to define which areas are affected by my node. All right, now let's do what we actually want to do. So I'll delete that thing, and I will come here right after my defocus. And I will create a fresh rotor node using the O shortcut. And I will hold my click onto that icon and come here and select the ellipse. Now I will draw a big ellipse on my image. And I will use that guy in order to create a vignette where I will darken the corners. I will create a grain node with the G key, or you can create it by going into the color menu and here, grain. Okay, And I will connect my grain node after my defocus. And I will plug my mask input to the roto that I just created. Now, if I come into my grade and gain down my image, of course I need to plug my viewer after my grade. All right, now I can see what I'm doing. So if I'm gaining down my image, I can see that whatever is inside my mask will be affected and outside, no. Well, in my case, I like the opposite. So how can I do? Well, if you check in your grade node, and that will be the same thing for any nodes, you will have the mask here that says, okay, out of my mask, I will check the alpha channel. And what I can do here, I could invert it. If I take that guy, I invert my mask, and perfect. Now, it's great, but it doesn't look good. And I like to smooth out that mask. So what I can do is by holding down the Control key or Command key on Mac, I can select a point and drag and drop it to create a feather. Then I will have something more smooth. And I can adjust that guy. So now if I want to adjust that guy, it will move everything. It will move the feather as well. But if I just like to reduce the feather by adjusting the other points, I will have as well to maintain the Control or Command key down to change a little bit how it is. And perfect. And now I'm creating that mask how I want. Maybe I will feather it here as well a little bit. And maybe more like that. And maybe more like that. Because I actually don't want to darken the top here and neither the bottom. I'm not really creating a vignette, right? I'm just creating a mask here to darken that part of the earth. So same, I don't want to affect the stars. So I will just make my shape a little bit bigger here. Okay, cool. Maybe a little bit more like that. And I can see my image without the rotor shape. I could close the properties, but if I want to see my image without the rotor shape, and having the properties open, I can use the Q key to toggle on and off the overlay as we see it earlier in the previous chapters. And now I have a better view of what's going on. So maybe I could darken down a little bit more. And as I darken down, I realize that this mask, even with the feather, is still a bit sharp. So what I usually do is to create a blur node with the B key and plug it after my rotor shape and put like a big value. So 100 or maybe like sometimes it's not because the slider is over that you can go over it. So I will select that guy and type 200 and there we go. I think it's a bit better. Okay, cool. Maybe a teeny bit more darker. Well, that's great. And with the multiply here, I will click on the color wheel and introduce a little bit of blue in my vignetting. Cool. Let's see how it looks like at the end of my comp. Boom. I think it looks pretty great. Okay, this is it for this video. Now let's see how to enhance a little bit our image. And we will do that in the next video. See you there. In this clip, we are going to recreate chromatic aberration. So, chromatic aberration, what it is? Well, let's see a picture, a real picture I took the other day. Well, chromatic aberration is that thing that will occur quite often on the border of your image when you obtain that kind of fringing. So you will have those small details and around you will get a little bit of the magenta shape or yellow. So depending of your lens, your camera, it may change, being like more or less visible, or the color may change a little bit as well. But basically it's a failure of the lens to superpose properly the colors due to the shape, the spherical shape of the lens. And if you toggle between the red, green and blue channels of your image, you can see that it's almost like my branches here were moving. And this happened a lot in the corner of the image. But if I go to the center, I can see that I don't have that thing. because at the center usually it's more like sharp and we don't have much chromatic aberration. And this is something I'd like to recreate on my CG shots because it will help a lot with the realism. So depending on the movie you will work on or which company you will work for, you may have very complicated tools, some special nodes to recreate exactly the same camera aberration as the camera who shot the movie. But here I'd like to show you a little trick to fake very quickly chromatic aberration. So what I want to do here is to create a transform node with the T key, and I will plug that transform node at the very end of my comp. So I'll plug it after my transform 2 here. And what I will do here, I will scale up my image a little bit. Okay, let's plug my viewer after the transform first. And I will disable the overlay because with the Q key, and I will close all of this. There you go, just to have my transform, just because I want to make sure that the gizmo of my transform is in the center of the image. And this is important because we are just going to scale up a little bit the image, and it has to scale up from the center to recreate that chromatic aberration. So here I'm scaling up the image just by 2%. So I put the scale value at 1.002. And now we are going to create a copy node with the K key. And I will copy from my transform 3 here to my transform 2 here. Okay, right now if I plug my viewer, nothing will happen. And why? Because we are copying the alpha channel. But now, remember I told you like when I toggle between red, green and blue, I get the change. So this is not the alpha channel that I need to modify. It's actually the color channels. So we'll copy here, for example, the red channel to the red channel. And now if I zoom on the stars here, you can see that we have a chromatic shifting happening. If I disable on and off, we can see the thing. And because I'm using a scale from the center of the image, if I go at the center of the image here and I toggle on and off, I will have a little bit, but not as much as the exterior right here. So I accentuate a little bit the transform just for you to see clearly what's going on. But be careful, we really don't want to put too much. And this is something that we see a lot in visual effects studios. Sometimes artists tend to put way too much chromatic aberration and it becomes more fake than natural. So I will reduce that to 0.001 and maybe I could do even less, like 0.05. Yeah, this is more what I'm looking for. Well, you can put the value you want, but I really want to show you how to recreate that and as well to stress on the fact that don't push it too much. Now, we've been shifting the red channel that gives us like red and blue, a little bit of stereoscopic feeling. But if we look at my image here, in this case, we more have a magenta shifting. And to create magenta, well, it's more that we need to shift red plus shifting blue. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to select those two nodes, do Control-C, Control-V, and connect that guy here at the same spot, connect that guy here, and I will come here, and I will shift as well the blue channel. And I will find my window here. And now let's have a look to those guys. And now my fringing is more magenta. And this is more what I want. Okay, now I can just toggle on and off to see the difference. And it's not much, but really, it's all those little imperfections that will really enhance your comp. So for example, here is the same. It's nothing, it's almost nothing, but it's there and it helps blending the pixels a little bit and integrates everything together. So this is a very quick things to do and that can be very, very successful. So there we go. I'll see you now in the next clip to add another imperfection to your image. See you there. In this video, we are going to add another imperfection to our image, and this is the grain. And you'll see it's going to be very simple. In our case, we are going to go in the Draw menu and select the grain here. And I will add this at the very end of my comp because it's a full CG shot here and we really want to add the grain on the top of everything. In some case, if you add CG to a real plate, maybe you want to keep the plate with the grain of the plate and add the grain only on the CG, but we'll see that in another course. For now, I really want to just add my grain on top of everything as it's a full CG shot. The grain node is one of these nodes that can be influenced by the alpha that comes through it. And we have here that option that says apply only through alpha. And I could uncheck it if I want to make sure that my grain will be applied to everything. But what I usually prefer to do is to make sure my alpha is proper before applying grain. And if I want to apply my grain to everything, well, usually I will just add a shuffle node before the grain node to shuffle the alpha to 1. So for doing that, I will hit the tab key and type shuffle. I will select it, hit enter, and place a shuffle node right before my grain. And I will set that shuffle to RGB stay the same, but I want the alpha to be totally white. Then I will be sure that my alpha is correct and my grain will be applied everywhere. So of course, with that option checked off, it's fine as well. It's just a method that I really like to use because it gives me extra security. And sometimes when you work fast and you have a lot of shot to do, it's better to have an extra security like that. Okay, perfect. Now, my grain is a little bit too much here. So let's see how we could tweak it. So we'll double click on the grain node to open the properties. And here I will be able to adjust a little bit of everything. But first, I do have here some presets that I can use. And you can try different presets to see if one of them is fitting your needs. So for example, I really like that guy here because it's very thin. And I'm not saying that I'm gonna keep it like that, but it's better to start tweaking your grain node from a base that's more or less what you want to achieve, that's from something which is totally different. So here, I think it's fine, but maybe I'd like to reduce a little bit the size of the grain blue and as well as the green. And the irregularity is nice, but you can just tune it down a little bit as well. But mainly what I want to change is the intensity. There is too much. So I just want to reduce the intensity of the red and the green and the blue as well, because as you can see, it's over the top here, over the one. And there you go. And I just want to have a very subtle grain here that's just gonna make our image look a little bit more sharp and realistic. All right, I think this is it for now. And I will now meet you in the next video to output this shot to the hard drive. See you there. In this video, I will render the shot to my hard drive. Yeah, it means it's almost done. Well, I don't know. Let's render the shot and see if everything is correct. This is a thing in Nuke. Sometimes it's very heavy to cache the shot on the timeline here and to be able to play it real time to see that everything works. So most of the time what we do is like we output the shot and we watch it. And then if something is wrong, well, we come back in Nuke. But before outputting it, like I noticed between those two clips, between the previous video and this one, that I think that my defocus for the background is a little bit too much. So I will come back to my defocus node here and reduce it a little bit, maybe to 0.5. I think it's better if it's a bit sharper. All right, that's it. I'll close the defocus for now. And now I will go into the image folder here in the image menu, and create a write node. And the write node as well as the W shortcut. That's a shortcut that we use a lot. Okay, I created a write node. So what is the write node? Well, the write node will allow us to write images or video on a hard drive. So basically, this is the node that will help us to render our shots. So whatever you will put inside the write node will be rendered. For example, if I put the input of the write node here at the end of my comp and I put my viewer after, I will simply render my entire shot. If you just want to render a specific part of your script, for example, the ship here, I could plug my write node here and I will render only the ship. Okay, in our case, I want to render everything, so we'll plug it here. Okay, cool. Now what's up? I just want to come here and click on render? No. Unfortunately, we have few other stuff to do before being able to render. It's not big, but bear with me. Okay, I want to specify first where I want to render my file. So I can click on that little icon here, file, and now I can navigate where I want to render my images. So I'll come to material, the folder that comes with this course, and I will create a new folder by clicking on that little icon here, and I will call it output. And click on OK. Now I will give a name to my file and I will call it my first shot in Nuke. That's a long name, but at least we know what it is. And now we need to specify the extension of that file. What file type we want to render. So here I will do .mov. If you on PC and you don't have the QuickTime codecs, maybe you could try to render with AVI, okay? But in my case, I will use MOV, and we'll click on Save. Now, a few things changed as soon as we clicked on Saved. And why? Well, Nuke automatically detects the extension we mentioned here, and changed the file type here for MOV. You have a few other file types you could use to render, and if you'd like to choose another one, just notice that by selecting a file type here won't change the extension on the file name here, and you will have to come here and change it manually, okay? But now I will just use the MOV file type. Now, when you choose a file type, there is options coming with this file type. And here with the MOV, well, you can choose the codec mainly. So you can go ahead and choose the codec you prefer. Like here, I think I will use the ProRes 422 for that case. And here you could choose the frame range. And if you have an audio file that comes with the shot, you could specify it here. Unfortunately, we don't have it. And here, if you know how to tweak your codec, you could do it in the Advanced tab here. But I don't want to touch anything. Now, I will simply come here and click on Render. And no, it's not done. We need still to specify the frame range. So sometimes when you click on Render, it will come here and set to input. Well, be careful with the input frame range because sometimes it's a little bit messed up. If you imported like recently another video file or image sequence that have a different frame range, it could be the frame range of that last video file. So what I like to do is to set it up to global because the global frame range will go and pick up the frame range that we specified in the project settings at the beginning of the course. So it's a safe way to know that we are rendering the right frame range. However, if you'd like to render a specific frame range, well, you can come here, select custom, and write the frame range that you'd like to render. Okay, I will go back to global, make sure that my frame range is correct from 1001 to 1090. Okay, cool. And I will click now on OK. And the shot will render. And I will cut the video and meet you when it's done to see the final result. See you there. Okay, so now I can have a look to my render. All right. I think it looks pretty good. It looks pretty great for a shot that we made in less than 2 hours. Of course, there are some areas that could be refined, such as the clouds right here that I think are not white enough, a little bit too gray, right? So we could boost them up. And I don't know, some areas of the earth here that are a bit too bright. But, well, it's your turn now and you can do whatever you'd like. You are the art director. So, as a homework, I will encourage you to try to analyze small chunks of your favorite VFX movies, just to get more aware of what's going on, and especially on some aspects of imperfections. For example, the grain, the lens flare, the chromatic aberrations. It's important to get used to those things, to get used to see those things, because to comp properly, you need as well to train your eyes to image details. Okay, regarding our shot here, as well we could introduce a bit more of camera float movements and camera shake, especially when the ship is entering on screen. Now, I will let you experiment with that, using the transform node, or if you like, you could try to understand how to use the camera shake node. Now, this leads me to an important point in Nuke. Now that you know the logic of the nodal compositing, it all comes down to understand how nodes are working. Well, Nuke has a very well-made help. If you'd like to know how to use a node, you can click on any question mark in the node properties, and here you will have info regarding that specific node, everything. So I think it's a good thing as well. Try to create a few nodes that you never used before and use them just by searching in the help how to use those nodes. Now, this is the end of that course. And I hope that doing that shot helped you to understand the logic of Nuke, and that now you'll be able to experiment on your own shots. We really only saw the tip of the iceberg here, but we will build up more and more through the series of tutorials. In the next course, you will learn how to use the powerful 3D abilities of Nuke to animate a matte painting. I really hope to see you there. If you have any questions, any concern, you can reach me at florian.girardot@gmail.com or connect with me on LinkedIn. Don't be shy. Also, I encourage you to leave a review for this course. This is important for me to get feedback, to improve, and to make sure I give you what you need. That said, it was a pleasure being with you for this introduction, and I really hope to see you soon for more advanced comping. See you guys!